The chandelier above the head table at the Greenbrier estate weighed 1,100 pounds. I know because I'd asked the venue coordinator 3 months earlier, half joking, whether it could actually fall on someone. She'd laughed. I'd laughed. Now I was standing under it in a silk Carolina Herrera gown that cost more than my mother's first car. And I was watching my mother sit at table 17 with her hands folded in her lap like she was waiting at a bus station. Table 17. Behind the dance floor. Behind the gift display. Behind a pillar that blocked her view of the head table entirely. My fiancé stood next to me, smiling for the photographer, his hand warm on the small of my back. He smelled like the cologne I'd given him for his birthday. He'd been telling people all night that I looked breathtaking, and he had not once, walked over to that table to greet my parents. I'd been engaged to him for 14 months. I'd known his family for 2 years, and it had taken me exactly 47 minutes of my own wedding reception to understand that I'd made a mistake I could not take back with a refund or a returned ring. But I could take it back another way. My name is Hollis Brennan, and I'm 31 years old. I grew up in a brick house on Maple Hollow Road in a town in central Pennsylvania you've never heard of. My father is a Finnish carpenter. He builds staircases, the kind with hand-turned spindles and curved banisters that take 6 months to complete and end up in houses featured in Architectural Digest. He's been doing it for 42 years. His hands look like tree bark. His back doesn't work right anymore. And every staircase he's ever built, he's signed underneath the bottom step in pencil so light you'd never find it unless you knew to look. My mother was a labor and delivery nurse for 34 years. She delivered, by her own conservative count, somewhere over 4,000 babies. She came home most nights smelling like antiseptic and exhaustion and joy. She kept a shoebox in her closet of thank you cards from mothers, some of them now grandmothers who still wrote to her every Christmas. They are not poor. They are not rich. They paid off their mortgage by the time I was in high school, and they drive a 2014 Toyota Highlander, and they eat dinner at 5:30 every night because Dad gets up at 4. They are exactly the kind of people who built this country and exactly the kind of people who get told they don't belong in rooms with crystal chandeliers. I met Bennett Ashcroft when I was 28. I was working out of a co-working space in Philadelphia, deliberately keeping a low profile, doing exactly the work I wanted to do. I ran a private equity fund, a small one by industry standards. We managed about $400 million in assets, mostly inherited money from my grandmother on my mother's side, who had quietly invested in a regional bank in 1968, and then in a logistics company in 1981, and then in a tech firm in 1994. And by the time she died, she had built something my mother and her sister never quite understood the size of. My mother had asked me, when I graduated from Wharton, what she should do with all of it. I'd told her, let me handle it. She'd said, be careful. She'd never asked me about it again. Bennett didn't know any of this. He thought I worked in finance. He thought my apartment was modest because I was frugal. He never asked questions that would have led him anywhere uncomfortable. And I never offered. I wanted, just once in my life, to know whether someone would love me without the math. We met at a coffee shop near Rittenhouse Square. I'd spilled an oat milk latte on his laptop bag. He laughed about it. He had the kind of laugh that made you feel like you'd done something clever. He worked in commercial real estate, he said. His family had been in development for 3 generations. Ashcroft Holdings. I nodded politely. I knew exactly who Ashcroft Holdings was. We were, at that moment, one of their largest silent investors. They didn't know it because we'd routed it through 3 layers of LLCs the way you do when you don't want to be on anyone's Christmas card list. I didn't tell him. For 2 years, I didn't tell him. His parents, I met 6 months in. His mother, Cordelia Ashcroft, was the kind of woman who said darling to people whose names she couldn't remember. His father, Lindsay Ashcroft III, had a handshake that lingered just long enough to suggest he was evaluating you. They lived in Bryn Mawr in a house with a circular drive and a name. Yes, the house had a name, Foxgrove, engraved on a stone gate. They were polite to me. I want to be fair about that. They were polite in the way wealthy people are polite to people they assume don't matter. They asked about my work in a way that suggested they hoped the answer would be short. When I said finance, Cordelia said, "How lovely," and changed the subject. Lindsay asked me once where I'd gone to school. I said Penn. He said, "Oh, undergrad?" I said, "And grad." He said, "How impressive," and then didn't ask what I'd studied. Bennett laughed about it later. "They're old-fashioned," he said. "They just need to get to know you." I should have noticed then. I think a part of me did notice. But love does this thing where it eats your better instincts for breakfast and tells you that you're paranoid. We got engaged on a Tuesday in March. He proposed in the kitchen with a ring that had belonged to his great-grandmother. I cried. He cried. We called my parents first, and my mother sobbed for 10 minutes and asked me to put her on speakerphone so she could tell Bennett she loved him. He said, "I love you too, Mom." I remember thinking my heart might actually crack open. His mother took over the wedding planning within a week. I should have stopped it. I let it happen because I was tired and busy with a fund acquisition, and because Bennett kept saying, "It makes her happy. Just let her have this." And because some small, selfish part of me wanted to see what a wedding looked like when you had unlimited money and no taste limits. The Greenbrier Estate. 300 guests, a string quartet for the cocktail hour, and a 12-piece band for the reception. A florist flown in from Atlanta. Cordelia chose everything. The dress, after I let her come to the fitting just to see. The cake. The invitations. The seating chart. The seating chart. When I'd asked 3 weeks before the wedding to see the seating chart, Cordelia had patted my arm and said, "Darling, don't worry your head about it. I've put your parents in a special spot." I'd taken her at her word because I'd been on a plane to Singapore the next morning and I had a board meeting and a deposition, and I trusted, against my own better judgment, that no one could be that cruel. The morning of the wedding, I helped my mother into the dress we'd picked out together at a Macy's in Allentown. It was navy blue with a beaded bodice, and she looked beautiful. My father wore the suit he'd bought for my brother's wedding 11 years ago. It still fit him perfectly because my father has never gained a pound in his life. He'd shined his shoes himself that morning at the hotel, sitting on the edge of the bed with a little kit he'd brought from home. "Do I look all right, honey?" he'd asked me. He never asks things like that. My father is not a vain man. He just wanted, that morning, to know that he wouldn't embarrass me. I told him he looked handsome. I told him I loved him. I kissed his forehead and I went to put my dress on, and I did not, even then, understand what was about to happen. We arrived at the venue at 4. The ceremony was at 5. The receiving line, the photographs, the cocktail hour, the reception. Cordelia had structured it so that the actual ceremony was almost an afterthought. The reception was the main event. The reception was where she could be seen. The ceremony itself was lovely. I won't pretend it wasn't. My father walked me down the aisle and his hand was trembling on my arm, and he whispered, "You look just like your mother." And I almost lost it right there in front of 300 people. Bennett said his vows in a voice that cracked. I said mine. We kissed. The string quartet played. Everyone cheered. It started during cocktail hour. I was talking to one of Bennett's aunts when I saw, across the room, my mother standing alone by the bar. My father was nowhere in sight. She was holding a glass of white wine and looking around the way you look around in an airport when you've lost your group. I excused myself and went to her. "Where's Dad?" "Bathroom, honey. He'll be back." "Are you okay? You look tired." "I'm fine." She smiled at me. She put her hand on my cheek. "You're so beautiful, Hollis. I keep looking at you and I just can't believe it." "Mom, has anyone been talking to you?" "Then it's family." A pause. Just a fraction of a second. "Oh, they're all so busy, sweetheart. It's their day too." "It's not their day. It's our day. Don't worry about us. Go enjoy your guests." I went back to Bennett's aunt and finished the conversation, and then I went looking for my father. I found him in the hallway outside the men's room talking to a waiter. Not making small talk, actually talking. The waiter was an older man, maybe 60, and they were discussing, I realized as I got closer, the woodwork on the staircase in the lobby. "It's quarter-sawn white oak," my dad was saying. "You can tell by the grain. They don't build them like this anymore." The waiter was nodding. My father saw me and his whole face changed. He straightened up and excused himself and came over and said, "Honey, this place is unbelievable. Have you seen that staircase?" "Dad, why aren't you inside with the other guests?" "Oh, I was. I just needed some air." He shrugged. "Crowded in there. Lot of people I don't know." "Has anyone introduced you to anyone?" "Don't worry about it, kiddo. Your mom and I are fine." I should have known then. I should have walked back into that room and grabbed Bennett by the elbow and said something, anything. But there was a photographer waiting and a wedding planner with a clipboard and someone needed me for something, and I let myself be pulled away from my own father in a hallway because I was being a good bride. I'll regret that for the rest of my life. The reception started at 7. The doors to the ballroom opened and the band struck up something jazzy and 300 people flooded in to find their seats. I was at the head table on a small dais, Bennett next to me, his parents to his left, his brother and sister-in-law to my right, then a long, long banquet of tables radiating out across the floor, each one with crystal stemware and white peonies and gold-rimmed china. I scanned for my parents. I scanned again. I couldn't find them. I leaned over to Cordelia and said, as politely as I could, "Where did you put my mom and dad?" She smiled. She had a very specific smile. It was the smile of a woman who has rehearsed a thing in front of a mirror. "Oh," she said, "I put them somewhere comfortable. Toward the back. I just thought, with all the speeches and the noise, it might be a lot for them. Older people can find these things overwhelming." "My parents are 62 and 64. "Oh, I know, darling. I just wanted them to be at ease." I stood up from the dais. Bennett's hand caught my wrist. "Babe, where are you going?" "To talk to my parents." "After the toasts, okay? Mom worked really hard on the timeline." I looked at him. I really looked at him. I had loved this man for 2 years. I had said vows to him 40 minutes ago. And in that moment, looking at his face, I understood something I should have understood a long time ago. He wasn't oblivious. He knew. He had always known. And he decided, on some level he would never quite admit to himself, that his mother's comfort mattered more than mine. I sat back down. Cordelia stood up to give the first toast. She talked for 9 minutes. She talked about Bennett. She talked about Lindsay. She talked about Foxgrove and the family business and the legacy and the future. She mentioned me twice. By name once. The other time she called me Bennett's lovely girl. She did not mention my parents. Not once. Not even to thank them for raising the bride. When she sat down, Lindsay stood up. He talked for 6 minutes. He mentioned my parents exactly 1 time. "And of course," he said, raising his glass, "to Mrs. Brennan and her husband, who I'm sure are very proud." Her husband. My father has a name. His name is Walter Brennan. He has been alive for 64 years. He has built 300 staircases. He raised 2 children. He has been married to my mother for 39 years. And the father of my new husband, in front of 300 people at my wedding, referred to him as her husband because he could not be bothered in 14 months of engagement to learn his name. I saw my mother at table 17 put her hand on my father's arm. I saw my father look down at his plate. That was the moment. I want to be clear about something. I did not decide in that moment to do what I did next out of revenge. I decided because I understood, finally and completely, that I had married into a family that was going to spend the rest of my life making my parents small. And I could not, would not, let that happen. I excused myself from the dais. I told Bennett I needed the ladies' room. I walked in my $18,000 dress, across the ballroom and out through the side door into the courtyard. I called my attorney. Her name is Marisol. She had been my grandmother's attorney before me. She picked up on the second ring, because she always picks up on the second ring, even at 7:45 on a Saturday night. "Hollis, aren't you supposed to be getting married right now?" "I did get married, about 2 hours ago, and you're calling me because I need you to do 3 things, Marisol. Right now, tonight." She didn't ask why. She has known me for 9 years, and she has never once asked why. "Go. First, The Cantwell loan position in Ashcroft Holdings. How much of it do we hold? A pause. I could hear her opening something on her laptop. Through the Meridian vehicle, 61% of the senior secured note. We've been buying it up for the last 14 months. Call it, tonight. I want the formal notice of acceleration delivered to Lindsay Ashcroft's home address by courier no later than 9 a.m. tomorrow. Another pause. Hollis. That note is $140 million. I know. Calling it will functionally bankrupt them within 45 days. I know. She was quiet for a moment. Then, second thing? The development partnership for the Brandywine project. We're the LP. Pull out, tonight. Send the formal withdrawal letter to all parties. They've got a closing on Tuesday. Not anymore they don't. Hollis, are you sure? Third thing. I want a petition for annulment drafted and ready to file Monday morning. Grounds will be fraud and material misrepresentation. I'll explain in person. Sweetheart, are you okay? I realized I was crying. I didn't remember starting to cry. They put my parents at table 17, Marisol. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, I'll have everything ready by morning. Thank you, Hollis. One more thing. What? Are you sure you want to do this tonight? You could wait. Take a day. Think about it. I've had 2 years to think about it. I just didn't know it. I hung up. I stood in the courtyard for another minute. The night air was cool. There was a fountain. I could hear the band inside playing something slow. I took my phone out again and I called my mother. I watched through the window as she lifted the phone out of her clutch. Hollis? Honey, where are you? Mom, I need you and Dad to come outside. Through the side door. Right now. Honey, what's wrong? Just come, please. A minute later, my parents came through the door. My mother first. Then my father. He was carrying her shawl over his arm. What is it, sweetheart? My mother's hands were already on my face. What happened? Are you all right? Mom. Dad. I'm so sorry. For what, honey? For letting them put you back there. For not paying attention. For not protecting you the way you have protected me my whole life. I'm so sorry. My father didn't say anything. He just looked at me. I need to do something now, I said. And I need you both to come with me. I walked back into the ballroom holding my father's arm. My mother walked behind us. We did not go to table 17. We walked, the three of us, straight up the center aisle of the ballroom, between the tables, past the dance floor, up onto the dais, and I took the microphone from the bandleader. The room went quiet. Bennett was standing up. Cordelia's face had gone the color of skim milk. Hollis, what are you? I held up my hand. My name is Hollis Brennan, I said into the microphone. Some of you know me. Most of you don't. I want to introduce two people to you. This is my father, Walter Brennan. He has been a Finnish carpenter for 42 years. The staircase you walked past in the lobby of this hotel? My father has built 14, just like it, with his hands. And this is my mother, Deborah Brennan. She is a labor and delivery nurse, retired. She has helped over 4,000 mothers bring their babies into the world. She has held more newborns than most of you have hugged in your lives. I let that sit there. I would like to thank Mr. and Mrs. Ashcroft for hosting this beautiful wedding tonight. I would also like to inform them and all of you of a few things they may not have known. I looked at Cordelia. Her hand was at her throat. Ashcroft Holdings is currently in default risk on a senior secured note worth $140 million. The note is held by Meridian Capital Partners. Meridian Capital Partners is a wholly owned subsidiary of Brennan Family Holdings. Brennan Family Holdings is the private equity vehicle that I manage, the one I founded 6 years ago, the one I have not, until this moment, mentioned to my husband or his family, because I wanted, just once, to find out whether someone would love me without the money. I paused. They didn't. There was a sound in the room. I cannot describe it. 300 people inhaling at the same time. As of 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, that note will be formally called. Ashcroft Holdings has 30 days to repay $140 million in full or to surrender the underlying assets. They cannot do this. I know they cannot do this because I've spent the last 14 months watching their books. The Brandywine project, which was scheduled to close on Tuesday, will not close. We are withdrawing our position. There are no other partners. The deal is dead. Lindsay had stood up. He was reaching for the microphone. I stepped back. I would also like to inform my husband of 2 hours that I am filing for annulment on Monday morning. The grounds are fraud. The fraud is not financial. The fraud is that he stood next to me tonight while his mother put my parents at the back of this room behind a pillar and he said nothing. He did nothing. And in doing nothing, he told me everything I needed to know about the next 40 years of my life. I turned to my father. Dad, I want everyone in this room to know something. The staircase in this hotel that everyone walked up tonight to take their photographs? You built that staircase. In 2009. I looked it up this afternoon when I was getting my hair done, just to be sure. Your signature is under the bottom step. My father's eyes were wet. He didn't say anything. Everyone in this room walked over your work tonight, and not one person knew. And that is the way the world tries to treat people like my father. As if the things they make and the lives they save and the children they raise are invisible. As if their hands don't count. As if their names don't matter. I turned back to the room. His name is Walter Brennan. Her name is Deborah Brennan. They are my parents, and they are the most important people in this building. I set the microphone down on the dais. I took my mother's hand. I took my father's hand. The three of us walked out of the ballroom together. We did not run. We did not hurry. We walked at exactly the speed my father walks, which is the speed of a man whose back has done 42 years of hard work, and the room watched us go. Bennett caught me in the lobby. Hollis, please. We can talk about this. My mother didn't mean it like that. Please. I looked at him. I did not feel angry, exactly. I felt sad. And underneath the sad, I felt free. You knew where they were sitting. I didn't. I swear you knew, Bennett. You walked past table 17 on the way to the dais and you didn't stop. He didn't say anything. Goodbye. I took my parents to the hotel restaurant. It was almost empty. We sat in a corner booth and my mother started laughing. Not a normal laugh. A delirious, shaky laugh. The kind people laugh when something terrible has been narrowly avoided, and they don't quite know what to do with their nerves. Hollis, she said. Hollis, my God, what did you just do? What I should have done 6 months ago. My father reached across the table. He took my hand. His hand was rough and warm and exactly the same as it had been when I was 4 years old and afraid of the dark. Honey, he said, you didn't have to do all that. We were fine. You weren't fine, Dad. I've been put at worse tables, kiddo. You shouldn't have been put at any table that wasn't next to mine. He squeezed my hand. He nodded. He didn't say anything else for a minute. Then he said, That staircase really is something, isn't it? I started crying and laughing at the same time, and my mother joined in, and the waiter came over very politely and asked us if we were ready to order, and we ordered hamburgers, all 3 of us. Hamburgers and French fries and chocolate milkshakes, because my father had not eaten dinner. The next 45 days were exactly what Marisol said they would be. Ashcroft Holdings filed for Chapter 11. Lindsay tried to call me 3 times. I did not answer. Cordelia wrote me a 6-page letter that I did not read. Bennett left me 17 voicemails over the course of 2 weeks and then stopped. The annulment went through quietly. There was no fight. There could be no fight. They had no leverage and they knew it. I did something Marisol disapproved of. When the bankruptcy court appointed a trustee to liquidate Ashcroft Holdings, I instructed Brennan Family Holdings to bid on the underlying real estate assets. We won. We acquired most of what had been the Ashcroft empire for roughly 40 cents on the dollar. And then I did something else. I retained every single employee, every administrative assistant, every project manager, every receptionist, every maintenance worker. Not one person lost their job. I told the new operating team I'd brought in, these people did nothing wrong. The family did. The family is gone. The people stay. I named the new entity Brennan Holdings, after my parents. My father didn't quite understand at first. I had to explain it to him 3 times. His name, On the side of the building he had, by sheer coincidence, helped frame the lobby of 26 years ago when he was a younger man taking jobs in Philadelphia for the Union. He stood on the sidewalk on the morning we changed the sign, and he looked up at the gold letters, and he didn't say anything for a long time. My mother was holding his arm. She was crying quietly. He just looked. Finally, he said, "Honey, that's a lot of letters." I started laughing. I couldn't stop. "Dad, are you happy?" He thought about it. My father always thinks before he answers a real question. It is one of the things I love most about him. "I'm proud of you," he said. "I've always been proud of you. But Hollis, I want you to know something. I would have been just as proud of you if you'd been a finished carpenter." "I know, Dad. I would have built you a staircase for your house." "I know. I still might. I'd like that." We stood there on the sidewalk for a little while longer, the three of us looking up at the sign. A year has passed. My mother sends me photographs sometimes of the rose bushes she's been growing in the front yard at Maple Hollow Road. My father has started in his retirement building a staircase in their basement, just because. It's mahogany. It goes nowhere. It's the most beautiful thing he's ever made. I have not married again. I don't know if I will. I think about Bennett sometimes. Not with longing, but with a kind of distant pity, the way you think about someone you saw drowning from very far away. I hope he is well. I hope he has learned something. I doubt that he has. People ask me, when they hear the story, whether I regret what I did, whether I went too far, whether it was worth it. All that destruction, just for a seating chart. I tell them the same thing every time. It wasn't about the seating chart. It was about my father, standing in a hallway outside a men's room in a borrowed suit, talking to a waiter about quarter-sawn white oak. Because no one inside the ballroom had bothered to ask his name. It was about my mother, putting her hand on his arm at table 17, telling him with her touch that it was all right, that she had him, that they would survive this the way they had survived everything else. It was about the fact that they should not have had to survive it at all. I would do it again. I would do it 10 times. I would do it 100 times. And if you are ever standing in a room full of people who think your parents don't belong there, I hope you do it too. Their names matter. Their hands matter. And anyone who tells you otherwise should not be standing next to you when you say your vows. I think about that night more than I'd like to admit. Not the moment I took the microphone. Not the look on Cordelia's face when she finally understood. I think about my father in the hallway, standing in his shine shoes, talking to a stranger about quarter-sawn oak because no one inside the ballroom would meet his eye. That's the part that stays with me. People keep asking if I went too far. They want me to apologize for the bankruptcy, for the annulment, for the empire I helped take apart in 45 days. I won't. What I will say is this: every choice in that ballroom carried a cost, and every person paid the bill they earned. Cordelia chose to put my mother behind a pillar. Lindsay chose not to learn my father's name in 14 months. Bennett chose to stay seated when I asked, with my eyes, for him to stand up for me. None of that was an accident. None of it was a misunderstanding. People show you who they are and then they keep showing you, and the only real question is whether you're willing to see it before it costs you something you can't get back. I almost wasn't. I want to tell you, especially if you are young, that intelligence is not the same as wisdom. I have 2 degrees from one of the best universities in the country, and I still walked myself, eyes open, into a marriage with a man who was never going to defend the people who raised me. Being smart did not save me. Paying attention saved me. There's a difference, and I learned it the hard way at table 17, watching my mother fold her hands in her lap. The other thing I want to tell you is that quiet strength is real. My father did not say one word that whole night. He did not raise his voice. He did not embarrass anyone. He sat at the back of a room he had helped build, and he held my mother's hand and he ate the meal they served him. That is not weakness. That is the strength of a man who knows exactly who he is and does not need a chandelier to prove it. I have spent my whole life trying to be half as strong as Walter Brennan, and I am not there yet. If you are sitting at your own table 17 tonight, in whatever form that takes for you, I want you to hear me. The people who put you there are telling you something. Believe them. And then, when you are ready, stand up. You do not have to be cruel. You do not have to be loud. You just have to be unwilling to spend the rest of your life pretending you didn't notice. My father is in the basement right now, building a staircase that goes nowhere. It's the most honest thing in our family, and every time I visit, I run my hand along the rail and I remember what it cost me to learn the simplest truth there is. The people who love you sit beside you. Everyone else can find their own seat.